Hey Ottawa, this is your Monday Market Snapshot for the Ottawa real estate market for Monday, September 2nd, 2024. Today is Labor Day, another long weekend, and the end of basically the summer. My name is Annalie Rice. I'm a realtor here in Ottawa, Ontario, and every week I bring you the details of what's going on in the Ottawa real estate market. This week, since we are the start of the new month, I will include the data and stats for the whole month of August. It will get updated again next week, but this will have the sort of a sneak peek ahead of all of the news releases that you get from the real estate boards and different brokerages. So let's see what's happening this week in Ottawa. Okay, so first off, let's look citywide. We see that the active inventory dropped this week by about just over 120. It's evenly balanced across the different property types. This is totally normal based on the fact that we were headed into a long weekend. People don't want to list right before the long weekend. The sales this week were basically the same as last week, just down by one. And you can see that it was an increase of the condos, but a drop for detached and slightly for towns for sales this week. Okay, so this is the visuals for the inventory breakdown, and you can see that both for the overall inventory in black and the active inventory in the green, that you can see that quite large drop off this week. You can see the same thing last year on the same week. That's where the light vertical line is. You can see that drop off. So it's very normal to have the drop off right at the long weekend. If you look at the sales, we've got the red lines, and you can see it's been very, very steady for the last 4 weeks or longer. And the conditional sales are slightly above that as well. And they've been holding steady slightly above the firm sales. You can see at the same time last year, we had a bit of a decline week by week. And then a little bit of a bump up as we had a very short fall market. So I guess we'll see how the fall market pans out this year. These next three charts break it down into the inventory for longer term. So the last chart there was just basically from last year, 2023 and 2024, but it's more pertinent to look to see how we compare to years past. So when the stats come out from the boards and they talk about inventory like as the 5-year averages or the 10-year averages, this is a 10-year running line of the inventory at the end of each month. And I've moved the dots to be representative of where the August inventory was. So you can see there for the detached homes, it's been since 2018 since we've had the amount of inventory that we have at the end of August. And the other thing I'd point out is that the sort of peak being in this summer and then dropping off, and we're past the peak, is what's normal. Last year's peak being in the fall was the abnormal thing. So if you look at all the years past, like 2014 all the way through to 2019 or so, before things got wonky with the COVID, you see that the peaks generally of inventory is in the summer or the early summer, and then it sort of drops off as you get later in the year. Okay, so this is the same thing for the townhome inventory, which you can see that's been very, very low for the last 6 years. And you have to go all the way back to 2016 to have the same amount of inventory at this time of the year for townhomes. So it's been a tight market for the townhomes. That's why it's always had quicker sales, more competition and such for townhomes. Okay, and then this is the last of the three charts. So this shows the condo inventory, and you have to go back to 2018 to have had more condos on the market at the end of August. I do want to point out one thing, and I don't have the charts right here to back it up, but I did sort of show this last week and talk about it. Is the fact that the breakdown of which type of properties exist in Ottawa is shifting as more stuff is being built. And in certain, like in the suburbs, I talked about how, Canada and Stittsville has more detached homes. In Barrhaven, there's more townhomes. And in Orleans, of the three suburbs, they have more condos. But downtown, the number of condos has been climbing quite drastically. Like that's what's being built. There's not very many detached or townhomes being built. But what you see is a lot more condos being built. And so the fact that we only still have 900 condos listed for sale right now, but there are so many more condos in existence, it's still quite tight. There are a lot of there are a lot more condos now than there were in 2018. So the fact that, they had 1,000 listed in 2018 versus 900 when there's how many more in existence, it's still quite tight market. So just wanted to point that out. Okay, so this is the new listings. We had 326 properties that were listed this past week. 109 of those were relisted properties. That's the gray line at the bottom. And that represented 33% of those listings that came to the market. And 217 properties were new to the market. So that was 67% of the listings. And interestingly, we are almost at the point where the sales matched up with the number of new listings. So that's interesting, because we had 210 sales and there are 217 new to the market listings. So when those two lines get closer, that's when you start having a bit more competition in sales. Okay, so then when we look at the sales themselves, we had 210 sales this week, and 14% of those were with no conditions. That's up just 1% from last week, and you can see it's a bit of a downward trend over the last few months since the spring kind of time frame. We had 18% of the properties that sold this week were at or above asking price. And again, you can see that that's been a downward trend. This is all to do with the fact that we've got higher inventory, less competition. It's only, select few properties that sell very quickly with competition right at the start. For sales within the first 7 days, it was 4% of the sales, which was 18 properties. 28% of those sold with no conditions and 50% sold at or above asking price. Those numbers are all down from last week. Part of that has to do with the long weekend, fewer new listings coming on the market, fewer hot properties that somebody wants to just scoop up, and also buyers just being a little bit distracted with back to school, last week of summer, such things like that. Sales within the first 30 days was 92 properties, which is 44% of the sales, and 17% of those sold with no conditions, while 37% of those sold at or above asking price. Okay, so at or above asking price this week, we had 38 sales that were at or above asking price. 71% of those, or 27 properties, sold at asking or up to 1% above asking price. 13% sold, that was 5 sales, sold between 1 and 5% above asking price. And then 6 homes, which represented 16% of those sales, sold for more than 5%. And for the first time in a little while, the highest percent and the highest dollar value were not the same. The highest percent over was 11% above asking, and it was a detached 4-bed home in West Nepean, Trent Village. It needed a bunch of updates, but it was really quite a unique home, and it was listed for $700 and sold for $780. The highest dollar value over was $101,000 over asking. It was a detached 4-bed home in Stittsville, listed at $1,099,000, sold for $1.2 million. Next, we'll zoom into the different areas of the regions of the city, and then we'll get to the month-end stats for all of August. So stay tuned. Okay, so first off, in the central urban region, you can see that the active listings dropped across property types, and the sales were up for towns and condos, but down for detached. In Canada and Stittsville, the active inventory for detached was down by 14 and slightly down for towns and condos, but the sales were actually up by 6 there for detached, and then just up slightly for towns and condos this week. In Barrhaven and Riverside South, we have kind of a mixed bag. Detached inventory dropped, as did townhomes, and I do note that the number of townhomes on the market there is dropping fairly quickly. So my charts and stuff that I talked about last week, which were details from 2 weeks ago, where I was talking about the high percentage of townhomes listed in Barrhaven Riverside South, those stats are definitely shifting. Whether or not it's all sales happening or if it's just, some of them are coming off the market, time will tell, but it's dropping a little bit. For sales in Barrhaven and Riverside South, it was steady for townhomes, and then detached were down slightly. Condos were actually up slightly. And in Orleans, not a whole lot of change for active inventory, just down slightly for detached and condos, and up just 1 for townhomes. And sales the last 7 days were down across property types. Pretty slow week for sales in Orleans. Okay, so this is the full data for residential detached. You can see that the number of conditionally sold properties is still above the sales this last week. So we can expect, hopefully, that the number of sales will kind of hold steady for next week, although it would be totally normal to have a drop off next week because of the long weekend. And this is the full data for the townhomes. In this case, the conditionally sold properties are below the firm sold properties this week, which is a little bit more normal in the townhomes just because they tend to have a quicker sale, quicker sales and more without conditions and such. So I guess we'll see whether or not the sales drop this week. And finally, the full data for condos. And it looks pretty healthy for sales for next week, with the conditionally sold still being above what the sales were this week. Okay, so this is my month over month average sale prices. So it's comparing the average sale price for July 2024 to the average sale price of August 2024 in the 5 different categories of homes. And you can see across the board, the average sale price is down, which is very normal for the summer months. Typically, the prices do dip. Most notably, it looks like the condos had a bit of a drop. I do recall at the end of July, there was like a $3 million condo that had sold. So that might have pulled up some of the averages in July, abnormally high. But again, totally normal to have a bit of a drop off in sale prices in the summer. It's just whether or not it holds through the fall and beyond. Okay, so this charts are specifically for the detached, and you can see there that the black line is for 2024. You can see that month to month, if you compare the black line compared to last month's black line, it was a fair drop off this month, but you can see that the average prices do tend to fall off through the latter part of the year. This one is for the semi-detached, and every time I post this, I always put the little caveat that semi-detached properties are a lot more volatile based on the very different types of semi-detached properties that we have across the city. We've got luxury ones in certain areas, and more of those are being built all the time. And then you've also got older semis that were, that they're half the price or a third of the price of those luxury ones. So it really depends on what is selling which ones, and that'll really affect the average sale prices for any given month. But again, you can always see that the averages of the sale prices tend to drop off through the latter part of the year. This is for the townhomes. Again, you can see that it looks like August of 2023, for all of the last 3 slides there, was a bit of a stronger month. But, it's down from month over month and typical for coming down on the latter part of the year. Okay, so this one is condos. It does not split into condo townhomes, condo row homes, and condo apartments. This is all condos together. And just like the others, you can see that throughout the summer, typically the prices do drop. You can sort of see here that usually in the fall, there's a bit of a rebound in prices. So I guess we'll see whether or not next month we have a bit of a rebound. Okay, so this is going to be the first one of a few charts that are going to sort of summarize, and I'll be talking to the data and sort of explaining how things are shifting, the high levels of inventory, and how it's, over time of having high levels of inventory, how it's making things shift. And we're finally starting to see a bit more of the results of that. So in this case, this is the close price to the original list price. So how close are the sale prices from the original list price? And you can see that they're dropping over the last 4 or 5 months in most cases. Since very early in the spring, that has been dropping, just meaning that buyers are getting homes at a price lower, on average, on lower than the asking price or the original asking price. And that's just because there's so much competition, so much inventory on the market. Some deals are being had. Similarly, with higher inventory levels, the amount of time the on average takes to sell a home does increase. So you can see that it sort of held steady for, since March through about June, but July and August, you can see in all cases, we've seen it jump. And so it's 36 days for detached on average, 30 days for townhomes, and then 40 days for condos right now, and a bit of a jump on that one. It's all a function of higher inventory levels, more competition, and less pressure for people to buy. Okay, so this is a graph showing the number of sales month by month and year by year, and you can compare them. And you can see that although we are above what the sales were in both 2022 and 2023, that's the darker purple and the dark blue, you can see that we're still very low on the number of sales. And so when the monthly stats come out from the board, they're going to have like compared to the 5-year average and compared to the 10-year average, and they are still very low. If you compare the 5-year average, has 2019, 20, and 21 all had very, very high fall sales. That's the blue one that's wonky off the top there, the light purple, and the bluish one that was that's second from the top there. Very high sales for those 3 years, and those are all included in that average 5 years. When you go back to 10 years, we're a little closer, but those wonky high years are going to pull those averages up. So yes, sales are higher than they were last year, even in the fall of 2022, but they're still very low. And that's just because the interest rates are very high, prices are very high, it's very expensive to buy. So it's a tough market for people to feel confident that they want to buy in this market. And finally, we have the months of inventory. And so you see months of inventory is sort of a combination of the inventory and then the sales. And so our sales have been very steady over this the week to week has been very steady. We had a fairly solid number of sales compared to the last couple of years. But the inventory is being quite high. The months of inventory is how many months would it take to sell all of the current inventory at the current sales rate if no more properties came on the market. So right now we're sitting at about 3.4 for detached, 2.1 for towns, and 3.4 for condos. And these numbers are still very low. There's still, not that many homes on the market, as we saw. Like, it's more than we've had over the past 4 or 5 years, but it's still not a lot considering houses are being built all the time and the number of houses out there is higher. The next slide will look at what it is for the citywide all properties and where that fits into the definitions. Okay, so when we look at all the properties across the city, all the citywide, and the months of inventory for that, we're sitting at about 3 months of inventory, which still is by definition in the seller's market of anything less than 4. It's been since 2017 since we've been in a balanced market by definition. But I do want to point out that buyers that are out there right now, they're comparing it to what it's been like the last 4 or 5 years. And when you're comparing it to the times where we had less than 1 month of inventory, it probably feels a lot more like a buyer's market, or at least a balanced market. And there are pockets everywhere where it is balanced or potentially even a buyer's market. But, unless they update these definitions to not be 4 months and then 4 to 6 and above 6, by definition, it's still a seller's market here in Ottawa. But I do believe that in a lot of cases, buyers have a lot more choice, a lot more leverage to be able to move on to a different property. There's plenty of inventory relatively, and they're not in a big rush or feeling like they have to buy right at this moment. So by definition, still a seller's market, but feeling a lot more balanced. And in some cases for buyers, it might feel like it's a buyer's market. Okay, so that's my update for the beginning of September here. If you have any questions, please let me know. And I will update these charts and include them again next week when we have the board data. A lot of the stuff trickles in over the first few days of September or of any month, and so things will get updated slightly. Hope you have a fantastic week. If your kids are headed off to school, I hope they have a great first week of school. My kids head off tomorrow for their first day of school. Have a great week.